Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for all those who are joining us online. This is being broadcast all over the world, so we have no idea how many are joining, but it's a sizable number, probably more than are in the temple right now. So we'll begin with some, introductions, since all of you may not know, first of all, Pia. And this is Pia Singh, a dear friend of ours of many years. And Dhyana, I think you know, but in case you don't. And this is Devi. And I'm Jyotish. Okay, so we've got that part set up. So this is what we're going to do tonight is present the ideas that have been coming up for the new Indira Institute. And it's a very exciting and very expansive new direction for Ananda. So I'll give a little bit of background and a little bit of background of not just this project, but where it fits in the evolution of Ananda and Master's work. Obviously, Master came to the world with two great aspects to his mission. One was to work with those people. By the way, if we're going to do introductions, step up. Hi. This is Ashrita, and this is Neha. And Ashrita's parents are part of the Pune Center and very core members. And Neha's father and mother are integral parts, in fact, almost the head of the work in Gurgaon. So it's just wonderful. And they've come here to join the high school. Okay. And so welcome them into your homes, into your hearts, and make them feel welcome here, which they already do. Do you want to say anything? No, I didn't think so. I wouldn't either. So where it fits into the evolution of Master's work in the world and Ananda's part in that. So, you know, Master came with two great missions. One was to work with devotees who were in tune with him, who wanted to learn his techniques, the teachings that he gave, the attitudes of life that led toward self-realization. And so that was really, one might say, the qualitative work that he had. But he had also a quantitative work. And that quantitative work was to help uplift world consciousness. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I have the feeling that that's an important work to do, is the upliftment of world consciousness. And so I think the timing that we're seeing here was determined probably even before Master was born, that there are some very, very long rhythms, and that Babaji, as you know, as Master said, he and Christ are overseeing the spiritual evolution of the planet. At any rate, as Master came on the scene and gave his great teachings and all of the energy that he put out in order to uplift the consciousness and change the consciousness of the West, especially America, then Ananda came along to provide a living laboratory for those teachings. It's one thing to have them just kind of in the ether or in lectures, but it's another thing to have a group of people who have lived these teachings for 50 years so that we can see what the result of that is. It's not just the meditation, it's the creation of a supportive environment that keeps reinforcing both our aspiration and our dedication and the whole process of moving along. So Ananda has been created to help do that. And ultimately, Ananda has been created for each of us to have an environment that is uplifted and designed for spiritual progress. But we can't replicate that all over the world. One, we don't have the resources to do it. And secondly, the world isn't interested in that level of dedication. But as Ananda progressed, we moved from just being here in the village to the city centers. Then we moved to the progression of taking these same teachings, but presenting to an entirely new audience, which was in Europe. New language, new culture, new ways of expressing it. Then after that, some years later, we took these teachings back to India. And there again, we faced a slightly different culture, a different way of working. There we haven't had to learn a new language primarily to teach in, but India is multilingual, and so we've had to translate the books and so on into many, many different languages. All of that has been essentially a geographical spread of the work. So we have basically Master's teachings, and we're spreading out geographically. And now, truly, that has spread out around the globe. But what we're doing now is taking these teachings and we're spreading vertically, not just geographically, meaning that up until now, mostly what Ananda was reaching out for, of course, well, I'll qualify it after I say it. What Ananda was reaching out for was to give these teachings to people who were interested in spiritual progress, interested hopefully in getting Kriya, and ultimately working toward self-realization. Now, naturally, here's the qualifier, but I figured I better give the concept first. Naturally, we were accepting everyone who came. We'd never turn anyone away. But there was a thrust of this whole work being primarily for those of a spiritual bent. And so that geographical spread was around the world to find that strata of consciousness. But Master, when he went around and gave his spiritual talks, his spiritual campaign, as he called it, to the audiences in America, he was not speaking just to devotees. In fact, you probably know the story, but I think it was in Minneapolis. There were 5,000 people who were in the auditorium, and someone afterward came up to Master and said, "Oh, it's wonderful, wonderful. Look at all the devotees who came here." And Master said, "There were 5,000 in the audience. We'll be lucky if 5 of them are real devotees." So he was giving those teachings to a mass audience. That's what I mean. He was working to uplift mass consciousness, and that was his quantitative work. The qualitative work were for those 5 devotees and the hundreds of other devotees that followed. But now we come kind of full circle, and the Institute is designed for more of a quantitative expression of the teachings to a wider audience that isn't necessarily self-defining themselves as wanting to be devotees. Some of them won't even define themselves as being spiritual. But the target audience that we're looking for, one might say, is the same one. Well, take that 5,000 and take half of them who just came because they were curiosity seekers. This fellow was real popular and he looked kind of strange, and let's go see what happens. But take the other half of that audience, and they were looking for some sort of way of helping their lives, of being happier, of uplifting their consciousness. That's the group that we're after with the Indira Institute. And so when we give these teachings, we need to, just as we had to translate into Italian in Italy, we have to translate not into a new physical language, but a new conceptual language. And so that conceptual language needs to be more for those people who want upliftment and who understand that real change in their life will not come about just by changing a little bit here or a little bit there. They realize that they need to change themselves, but they don't necessarily know how, nor do they necessarily define that as a spiritual process. It is just an upliftment of consciousness. So that is and we'll show a lot more detail of the Institute, Indira Institute tonight. But to give a little bit of background for us, we've known Pia, we've known Dhyana for a long, long time. Devi and Dhyana and I have an invisible bungee cord that connects us. Generally speaking, we have lived either in the same house or in the same duplex, or when we move, one of us moves anywhere very far, the others kind of pretty soon come. So we're just now setting up an apartment in Delhi, and who will be living there? Dhyana, Jyotish, and Devi. And it's 5 minutes away from Pia. So over the last few years, the four of us, there's some kind of a special energy. And we have been involved in a number of projects for Ananda. One of the things that we do is every year we go and we seclude together or take a retreat in this seclusion house at Abbot Mount. That's about 60 or 80 miles as the Indian crow flies from Babaji's cave. And so it's in that same area where the Pandavas were, where Babaji was, and it really feels like Babaji and Master are very, very present. And somehow with the four of us together, it's almost as if an antenna is there and new ideas for new elements for Master's work come. Before we started that, Pia helped manifest the Answer movie. And at that time, we'll let her tell the story of her meeting with Swami and coming into the Ananda world and so on. But she helped manifest the the Answer movie. After that, the ideas for Brindaban, the work with the widows in Brindaban came. After that, many, many ideas have been coming for the spread of Ananda's work throughout India. And in many ways, the new initiatives, the seed thoughts were there. And then, about a little over a year ago, Pia's mother passed away, and her father had a sort of a spiritual awakening at that time, and felt that he had accomplished absolutely everything that could be accomplished by a person in the world. He basically helped build the city of Gurgaon with all the housing and malls and so on. So all of that, but it was a very, very high-minded work that he did in doing that. Not a lot of people know this, but he got most of that land without ever paying for it, just on the promise to the farmers that he would, when things got rolling, that he would pay them back. That is an extraordinary thing to have happen, but the power of his honesty and personality and so on. But we won't go into that more than to say that he had a spiritual awakening. He said, I've accomplished everything that I wanted to do, but I haven't done anything for the upliftment of society. I want to do something. And so on a piece of land, which they're trying to get permissions for from the government, the idea is to build a really beautiful, iconic temple. It's 7 acres in one of the very best districts in Delhi. So it's an absolutely prime piece of land. So he's interested in building that, and the family is, Pia's brother and sister are interested in helping him do that. But he said, also on that, we need something to help uplift consciousness, not just a building. And at first the idea was to do a leadership institute, but as it's evolved, and it's gone through many, many evolutionary stages, as it's evolved, that is off the table. And what is left is an institute completely based on Master's teachings and completely dedicated to the upliftment of consciousness of this larger group of people. So this work, as we grow vertically, it could be far, far, far bigger than the totality of all of the Ananda centers and all of the things that we've done so far. So I think I'll end there. That gives you a sense of the evolution of this, and I'll let Pia speak, and then we'll have the PowerPoint presentation of the details.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's such a pleasure to meet everyone and be amongst people who are so pure of heart and with such a high consciousness. Really, it's an honor for me to be here amongst all of you and speaking with all of you and sharing this with you. So thank you. I thought maybe I'll just start with telling you all a little bit about myself. I'm sure many of you are curious, but I'll keep it really short. I had a fairly conventional upbringing, peppered with some experiences which may have been slightly out of the ordinary, because my mother would always take me to a lot of pilgrimage sites in India. And I developed a great love of the mountains from a young age. And I've been trekking. I learned how to climb when I was very young, but I didn't pursue that. But I've been trekking actively in the Himalayas since I was about 14, 15 years old. And I was always drawn to places which had a spiritual resonance, but it was not something that was in my conscious mind at that point. The adventure drew me there, but it always drew me to those kinds of places. And I had a fairly conventional life. But I do remember some thoughts stayed with me from when I was a child. I remember as a young child, I would always look in the mirror and think, who am I, you know? And I could... Don't be too close to the mic, you can be... Okay. And thank you. And I was always look in the mirror and think, who am I? And I could never relate to the person I saw. And so that's a deep experience. It always stayed with me, actually. I must have been about 8, 9, 10 years old. But life went along. I had a normal, conventional life, far away from a spiritual life. And then I remember I went on a trek, which was 11 years ago, in the Himalayas, which I routinely did. And I took a copy of the autobiography with me. And interestingly, I mean, I was always intellectually interested, and I would read a lot. I'd done a course of the Bhagavad Gita at college, more as a fun thing to do. And I had, on a very difficult trek, 10 years before that, I had tried to read the autobiography, which was the perfect environment to read a book like that, and I couldn't read it. I read one page and I left it. Anyhow, 10 years later, I took the same book back with me, and I read it through the night. I didn't sleep that night, which is unusual. When you're trekking, you always sleep. And I just felt I have to learn what they're talking about. And through the trek, I kept seeing Master's face, you know. I would close my eyes, I would see his face. And I came back, and there was a phone number in the back of the book. And I called, and I never looked back. I did my classes. In fact, Dhyana ji gave me Kriya Yoga initiation. And from then, we became very close. We are like sisters. And there was no looking back. And then, actually, I met Swamiji, again, because of Dhyana ji, maybe, I think, a year and a half before he passed. And it was a very eventful meeting for me. And he just said one thing to me. Post our meeting, in fact, he sent me an email. And in the email, he wrote to me that I'm planning now to make these movies, which I feel is the next phase of my life. And if you help me, it will deepen your attunement. And I don't think I realized the import of what he was saying at that point. It's only now that I think I'm beginning to realize. I don't know if I fully realize, but I'm beginning to realize. And that was the beginning of my journey with Swamiji's projects, I would say. We started the movie The Answer, and Swamiji, within 3 months of the commencement of the project, took Samadhi. And I think, I don't know if many of you know, that movie was shot here actually, and amongst very turbulent circumstances. Latika here certainly knows what happened, and she was a great stalwart in keeping it together. Jyotish and Devi had to get deeply involved. And I think for the next couple of years, everything possible that could go wrong went wrong actually. But because of that, actually, we got close because of that project. I mean, we worked together as a team, and when you work under difficult circumstances, it brings you much closer together. And now the movie is finally releasing after many years. And that led us on to other things. Then post that came the birth of the Paramahansa Yogananda Charitable Trust, which is first working in Vrindavan with the widows. And that also, I would really say, was a project that was manifested really by the four of us. And in keeping with Swamiji's thought process of where the work should and how the work should expand in India, that the spiritual work should not be just for spiritual seekers, but there should be one element of it which helps to alleviate people's suffering and thereby raises consciousness on a mass level by doing that, which many other charitable organizations, I mean spiritual organizations have, like the Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda has a Ramakrishna mission which does a lot of that work. And we just felt that component perhaps may be missing from Master's work. So that project got born. Now I think even that project is into about 3 to 4 years. The purpose of my telling you this really was that we have really, 4 of us have been working together on many, many projects. And there are other outreach projects in India also. And I think it was a preparation for this institute. That is what I really feel. And where I think Jyotishi elucidated on this somewhat, I will just give a slightly a larger background. And I think the birth of this project is also interesting in the context of what it hopes to achieve. As Jyotishi said, my mother passed away about a year ago. My father had a spiritual awakening at that point. And there is a piece of land that he has in Delhi, where actually a well-known temple exists at this point. He wanted to redevelop that and create something that will bring spirituality to many people and really become a sort of a beacon of spirituality in the city of Delhi and NCR, which is the greater surroundings of Delhi. And the idea with him that germinated was that he wanted to build a leadership institute, not because he had any affinity with a leadership institute per se, but he thought it was a vehicle for changing the world. Because the thinking really was that if you change leaders, you can change society. I mean, imagine if someone could change Donald Trump, how different America would be, right? But that may not be possible in this incarnation for anyone. But it's the power of making a change at a leadership level is really transformational for society. So the thought process for that institute was born out of that consciousness. And actually what happened, I think that was just a vehicle for getting us all together. Otherwise, I don't think we as a group would have come together to think of something like this. So it just germinated that idea, and I would like to share with you that there is one other integral member of this group, Daljit, who I think many of you know. He's not physically here today, but he's a key person in the work of actually the trust as well as the institute. He's part of our core thinking and will be deeply involved in carrying the work forward. I do believe, and this is my intuition and my belief, that this is really Babaji and Master and Swamiji bringing us all 4 together to germinate this idea. And what really happened after that was that the Leadership Institute was shelved because as a standalone institute, it didn't really make any sense. Leadership is normally taught as a quality or an intangible within the construct of a larger curriculum like a business school, etc., not as an independent standalone institution. But what really happened with that was that it just brought us together and it bonded us in a way that allowed the consciousness to come through that what we need to do is create an institute which will change mass consciousness. And I really believe that is really being channeled straight from Babaji, because that was Babaji's mission, to change mass consciousness by uniting East and West. And that's exactly what the purpose of this institute is. And where the inspiration came to the four of us and Daljit was really that how can we change mass consciousness? I mean, what is needed to do that? I mean, we have this community which is, I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, I have never seen something like this, and I had to come here to experience it to know what it is. Honestly, I had heard about it, but seeing all of you, seeing the look in your eyes, the smile with which you make food, or you serve, or you just greet everyone, and the purity of purpose, it's incredible. But as Jyotishi said, Ananda is a living laboratory for all the teachings, and the teachings have been put into practice. I mean, and you all are actually living the teachings. Then there is the world out there, in which Ananda is active across many countries. And you have some urban communities where, again, there is a sense of community, not as strong as here, but there is a sense of community. And then there is the world out there. People like myself who learned meditation. But what did I learn? I learned how to meditate over a period of 1 year. And then I had to find my own way in the world, which is the way it is for many people. But then again, I was a spiritual seeker, and I was interested in making that effort. The mission of the Institute really is, which you will be seeing later in the slides, is that it's a new way of conveying Master's teachings to the world at large. And we felt that the most effective way, and I don't think we felt, I think this is what we feel Babaji and Master and Swamiji are channeling through us, is that the new way to teach Master's teachings would be that we anchor them in the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. I'm sure everyone here has read the Gita, and I'm sure everyone would agree that it is based on universal principles which are found across all religions, and they are in keeping with this non-sectarian nature of our teachings at Ananda. Secondly, the Gita actually is a manual for life. It is difficult to understand it like that because it's always an esoteric document, and sometimes the presentation is not really easily relatable or understandable, but actually it is an instruction and it is a manual for how to live your life. So what we really want to do with the Institute is deliver Master's teachings using the Gita as a vehicle and anchoring the teachings in the Gita. The Gita is, as you will see, is broken, I mean, in our presentation has been elucidated into 9 different Navratnas, which are the 9 main components of the Gita that can be subject to change as we go along. But those will be the delivery vehicle for allowing people to live the teachings. Because what we really felt was what may be missing from the life of a devotee, and more importantly from the life of a non-devotee, as Jyotishi said, the reach of this is honestly much larger and should be much larger, is really how does one integrate the teachings into your daily life? And how does one make them practical, and how does one make them livable? And that anchoring and that grounding, we felt, is what hopefully will allow people to allow the teachings to participate in their daily life. So that was really the vision. That is what we are trying to do. Over and above that, what we really feel inspired to do is to create a community, and community not in the sense of Ananda community, but a network, maybe that's a better word, as well as a virtual community of people who will come up, who are seeking peace. Some may want to seek a spiritual path and may go on to take Kriya, but perhaps the majority may not. But just people who want to lead a better life, who want some peace, freedom from stress, to create a community of those people and give them tools which will constantly reinforce the teachings and allow them to be in that vibration, because otherwise it doesn't really work. So those could be things like seva opportunities, those could be workshops, seminars, availability of continuous contact with Ananda people, etc. So just want to share this with you and share where we are in this vision. And most importantly, for me to be here, to be with all of you, I don't feel that this is our work, of the four people sitting here. We are just people who have brought the work to a point where we can communicate it in a way that is comprehensible. But it is all our work together. It is the work of people who have devoted their lives to Master and Swamiji. And it's a collective work that I hope we will all together, in whichever way we can all contribute or we feel inspired to contribute, take forward and change the world and really deepen our spiritual life by taking forward our God and Guru's work. Thank you.
I think now we'll do a PowerPoint presentation so that we can show a little more clearly the details of what we're doing. So we would like the lights off. So here's the vision, and so you can rather read through it, but we don't want this just to be a reading exercise. Basically, the Institute is meant to, as we've been saying, bring Master's teachings to a larger audience. We're talking about Gita Navratna, but in other settings in the West, in a university, it wouldn't probably be presented that way, but we'd present the same principles.
Another important point is you see, courses will be based on a principle of upward progression of consciousness. This isn't, we're not publicizing this, we won't, as something for people who are necessarily on the spiritual path. We want this to be open to people of whatever their interests might be. So it's directional development, and Master's teachings are so wide, they have such a wide spectrum of applicability. And so really what we're trying to show is how to uplift daily life by an integration of these teachings. So that's the main vision. And the target audience, this is just a graphic. You can see the Institute, students, seniors, professionals, young adults, college students, and so everyone. Yeah, everyone.
But as we give a course, we may change the presentation of that course according to the particular target audience. The same principles will be there, but you would present them quite differently to a professional than you would to a student growing up.
So we really are the teachings, what is presented through the Institute, it will be different from this year when we came to, this fall when we came to India and we began meeting with Pia. The first question she said to us was, why do we need the Institute if we have the centers? And it was, I just went home and I thought about it, and it was like, yeah, it can't just be a duplication of what we do in our teaching centers throughout the world. So what we're doing is, and we'll show it more clearly in the progressive slides, is to create a system where people identify, this is the Indira Institute system, and the core will be what we're calling a signature course, Gita Navratnam, 9 gems, from the Gita for for modern life, and and there will be a very specific system that people will identify. Oh, you go to the Indira Institute, and this is what you. I'm getting a thing from the sound guy. Face the mic. So it will. We want it to be known for that. So it's distinctive from level 1, meditation 2, 3, 4, but really creating a new system that will roll out and can be delivered and modified according to the audience. Okay, so that's sort of self-evident. big component will be online as well as in person, and another big component will be mentoring, ongoing mentoring.
This is, we've come up with this analogy to understand the flow and the system. So starting at the bottom with the roots will be the signature course, which at this point we're thinking will be over a 3-day period and probably a residential program. Because if you get people to come together and be together for that whole time, the conversations and reinforcement that they have will allow a much greater change of consciousness than if they commute and drive home and get involved in whatever daily activities. So that's the current thinking, but everything is extremely flexible still. So that signature course will be given over and over and over again. Then the trunk will take these 9 gems, which you'll see in just a moment, and we will work in much greater depth. So the first gem is resolving inner conflict. As Master explained, the Gita and the Mahabharata, the warring family, are the family of consciousness within ourselves. So that resolving of inner conflict, you can present that concept over a 3-day period, and maybe you have 10 minutes or 15 minutes to present a concept like that, or 5 minutes. But the course to really work on how you work on that on psychological levels, on past karmic levels, on all kinds of levels, how do you really resolve your inner conflicts? So there'll be a whole course that will be built around just that one Navratna, and then one gem, and then there will be courses for all the 9. So that's the trunk.
But when we say a course built around it, what we're meaning is, first we'll teach the philosophy, but then we'll say, what core aspects of Master's teachings help us to resolve inner conflict? Affirmation, concentration, self-analysis, introspection. So we'll with each of the main themes of the Gita, we'll bring Master's core teachings and practical techniques so that I can do this. It isn't just, I can resolve inner conflict through the affirmation, positive thinking, and so forth. So that's how Master's teachings will be spread in sort of indirectly, but very powerfully, and people can apply them.
And a very real emphasis on personalizing and living these teachings in your life, as opposed to here's some nice philosophy and goodbye and good luck. So then the branches, all of these branches are the many, many practical applications into success, into relationships, into music, into nature, into all kinds of different aspects where you take these core teachings and then you apply them to particular areas. And the leaves will be further lighter experiences. Maybe they're concerts, maybe they're art exhibits, maybe they're satsangs, maybe they're lectures on particular topics, but lots, and a tree has thousands of leaves. The Institute will have thousands of leaves because we want continual reinforcement for this network or community of people that we're wanting to create. So these are the 3 levels. Signature course is called Gita Navratna, 9 gems for living the Gita in modern life. The trunk are progressively deeper courses presenting the central threads of Master's teachings, and the branches are the application in many, many different ways. So now we'll get into the root signature course. We started with asking the question, not what should the course be, but what outcome do we want? Because you have to start with a goal before you build the pathway to that goal. So we want participants after the 3-day course, they should leave or must leave feeling that their life has been significantly improved and that they've got their consciousness uplifted. They understand the principles and they're inspired to follow those principles. They'll leave with very clear tools and techniques. We will create, at this point we're calling it a 20-minute sadhana. We're not exactly sure that that's where it will be, but it will be a specific sadhana, just as there's a system of energization exercises. And you go through that system, and that's the energization exercise. There will be a sadhana, the core of which will be Hong Sa meditation. But there'll be some, maybe breathing, some relaxation, then concentration, Hong Sa, and then an expansion of consciousness, perhaps visualization of being in space, and then coming back and feeling peace and joy and love and expressing that through prayer to your loved ones and so on. We haven't designed it, but that gives you a sense of what it would be. And then we want a lot of opportunities for ongoing involvement for these people. And many additional courses, as we said, Seva, network of like-minded people, and so on. So these are the 9 gems. Now these 2 may change, but this is where we are now. So we looked at the Gita not as a bunch of slokas, but what are the core elements, what are the core teachings in the Gita? So resolving, you can read them, resolving inner conflict, understanding karma, the soul and the ego, dharma and right action, knowing truth or discrimination, directional development, upward directed feelings, overcoming limited self-definitions, and self-realization. And as we say, those same principles will be expressed slightly differently for different target audiences, but each of these, we may build a course of 6, 8 classes around how to work on resolving inner conflict. Same with each of these. So that's the trunk of the tree. The trunk is in depth, but as Devi said, instead of taking Master's teachings and teaching them sequentially, as we do in the path to Kriya Yoga. So first you have a course in how to meditate. So you learn meditation. And then you have a course in Raja Yoga. You learn some philosophy and breathing techniques and whatever you learn in that. Then is disciple, but it's stacked up. One follows the other. Here what we're going to do is change that dynamic. So we'll take something like will, energy, and magnetism, and we'll talk about will, energy, and magnetism in how you resolve inner conflicts. Instead of giving a course, well, here's willpower, and here's the energization, and here's magnetism. It's woven through. These threads will be woven through in all of the courses that we give. And so meditation, you can read them. Will, energy, magnetism, concentration, positive thinking using affirmations and visualization, self-analysis, health and vitality, and controlling the reactive process. Now, these 2 are undergoing, tell you a secret, we made these up yesterday. So everything is very fluid, but we're just here trying to capture the essential threads of Master's teaching so that we can wind those through each of these different courses that we give. These are just some of the branches, just to give you an idea. We have like 10 listed here, but there could be 50 branches. All of the, Swami wanted a department for each of his books, major books. So that's the kind of thinking that we'll have for this. This is where we will draw from a lot of Ananda teachers and ask them to come, perhaps from here, Europe, here being America, Europe. Generally speaking, most of this signature course and the early classes will be done primarily by the Indian teachers because we'll be repeating those over and over and over again.
And also I should add, these branch courses, they probably won't be happening for, I would say, at least a year, because we have to develop the signature course very strongly and gain recognition and identity for that before we begin bringing in the satellite courses.
Oh, what happened? This is the pilot of Navaratna course. The first one will be given by Devi and me at a renewal week. And you're all the guinea pigs. And we're going to want feedback so that we can begin to improve. Then we will, Dhyana and a team in the Delhi area will give a number of those pilot courses, not just to devotees, but also to corporates, to other places, to begin to refine. So that refining process may go on for months, however long it takes, and then there will be continued revision until we feel confident that the course is what we want before we proceed on. And finally, Ananda Sangha is the fountainhead of it. And that's it.
Hello, everyone. It's really a joy to be here with you. And this is a thrilling time for Ananda. Ananda here, Ananda in India, certainly for all of us. I'm sure you can feel the energy around this. And I think that it's not just that the masters want to bring this to earth, this institute. I think people are calling for it in the world, everywhere. And the need is great, and that's why it's happening. So I just want to convey to you how thrilling it is to work on this and to try to bring it down to manifestation and to really be open enough and receptive enough to hear and listen to what the masters want to do. I remember when Pia and I were driving somewhere last summer, and we were talking. We were in a 2-hour drive. We were talking about this and that for the Institute, and then suddenly she said, and I really think we should focus on the Gita. And we said, yes, the Gita. And it was just divine. It was given. These things that you have seen have been given. And we're only custodians, and people are trying to make it happen. As Pia said, we need, everyone's prayers and support and help. So just to start with that. And also you might ask, well, how does this fit in with Ananda India now? We've been there since 2003. We have a great work in India. You might say, what is this needed? Well, the answer is yes, because we reach only so many people there. At the beginning, when I went there, there was a group of us, and Swamiji said, just go out and teach Master's teaching, just go out. And we were on airplanes every month, going to some different place, and we taught hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of classes to people. And we came, who came from those classes? Kriyabans, but not a whole lot of people. We had hundreds of people who came, and we had a few people coming back for Kriya. And I always had in my mind, where are those other people? Can we offer them something? And it's like the big end of a funnel. you have all these people and you come down to the Kriya Bands. And these other people, they were seeking help. They were looking for help. So we went to Chennai, we went to Bangalore, all around NCR. We went to Mumbai, we went to Pune. We've established centers there now. We have 8 centers. We have a strong foundation and a base in India. But there's still something missing. I mean, there's 1.3 billion people in India. We need to reach out more. And so what we have found is that our most popular classes, some of them are our spiritual fairs. We offer a variety of things. People can take a variety of classes, and people come. They love that. People from all over come. Another thing that happened just recently, which is wonderful, is Dr. Aditya in Pune. He organized a walkathon for health. Now, he had 1,600 people there. Now, what did he have them doing? Energization and yoga postures before the start of the walk. People loved it. They didn't know quite what it was, but here, try it. And so that was a whole other group of people. And then also there, they've been teaching to corporates, to the Tata Corporation. I think he had 80 different classes that he taught to them. Leadership, relaxation, pranayama, how to work with people. And so we found there's such a need that people, they don't necessarily want to be a disciple, a Kriya Band, they don't want to be a member, they don't want to come every day, they want to come every week, but they need the teachings. And what they're asking for is, how can I be more happy? How can I be more joyful, peaceful? How can I be a better spouse? How can I have better relationships? How can I be more successful? How can I be more abundant? People want these teachings, and guess what? We have them. Master taught so many things. And we teach probably, I don't know, the 4 basic and 4 to 6 other courses in our centers, for the most part, at least in India. But there's so many classes. And I wanted to read to you, a group of us in India went through some of Master's and Swamiji's books to find out what all did he talk about and teach. So we went through these books and we captured the essence of what Master and Swamiji were talking about and the technique. So we went through these books within the past 6 months. All of Raja Yoga, Material Success through Yoga Principles, Supportive Leadership, the Wisdom Series, all the books, the Precepta Lessons, Intuition for Starters, Super Consciousness, Conversations with Yogananda, Essence of Self-Realization, Master's Talks, and the books with Master's Talks, Money Magnetism, Patanjali. And then the most beautiful was the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Word for word. What's in there? What is the essence? And we sat and read that, and someone typed it out. Then we gave that to Jyotish and Devi, and they came up with those gems that you saw. This is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And so this is what we want to teach, to give these teachings and techniques and tools and methods out to everybody. Master's work is for everybody. And for the beginning of Ananda in India, and surely here, we had to focus on a certain group. But now we have a strong base. We can reach out more. So then when we go back to India, what I'm planning to do with the group there, including Pia, is we'll watch the Inner Renewal Week series here with Jyotish and Devi, and we'll give feedback on that. We'll watch it with a group of Indians that we select. We'll get feedback from them. We'll keep refining the course, and then we'll teach some different teachers there how to run that course. Then we'll do pilot programs there with different people, all backgrounds. We'll run the course, and then Jyotish and Devi come in September. They'll do a bigger audience. Then we'll go all around India, and we'll give these teachings to everyone who wants. And at a certain point, we'll talk later about the actual institute. But right now, it's an institute without walls. I mean, we just need to get out and teach these teachings to all those who are in need. God bless you.
So, thank you, Pia, Dhyana, Jyotish. for such inspiring presentations. So I'll just kind of close now for all of us. You know, many of us in this room were founding members of Ananda Village and watched it spread, as we were saying, geographically. And the remarkable thing is, and I think any of us who have been here since the beginning know, that we didn't do this. Not even Swami did this work of Ananda, but it was the divine will that manifested it. And I think with this institute, we're very aware that we're just sort of capturing. The ideas are there. The thoughts for communities are there. The thoughts for sharing Master's teachings. Another key thought that inspired us was Master says about his Gita commentaries, millions will find God through this work. And we were asking, how can millions find God through this book? Will millions read this 600-page book? Probably not. But the book is a vehicle for, and we're using it as such, as a vehicle, because the Gita is so beloved in India, as a vehicle for practical spirituality. And that's what's missing in the world today. There's spirituality or religion, and then there's, you know, the world and making it and making ends meet and getting ahead. But how do we bring those together? Someone sent Pia, and she passed on an article, I think it was from an Indian magazine, about, interestingly, an Indian woman living in England who wrote a book based on Master's commentaries on the Gita. I think she's with SRF. But it's for children, and how children can resolve the problems in their life through these teachings. And this just came out. And in it there was this is heartbreaking, but she said there is every hour a young student in India commits suicide. Every hour, because of the pressure and the demands of that society. And it's not, maybe the suicide rate isn't so high in the US, but the addiction rate is, you know, we know what's going on out there. And so the need for how to uplift your life. We spoke with Ashrita and Neha the other day. They came over for tea, and we said, why did you come here? And they both said with such sincerity and purity, we realized that we really weren't learning anything. It was just about having the pressure and the exams and doing well in the exams, but we couldn't be who we were. And we said, enough. Two very brave young people who are breaking out of that system. And so what we're trying to do, and I think we won't do it. Believe me, I know it's not us. It's the will of the Masters to show people you can live. There are practical tools, meditation, cooperation, you know, all the things we listed and more, of how you really can change your life and improve your life. And I think it could go, you see things, these picture of an egg goes viral on Instagram, you know. Why? But some of you know what I'm talking about, some of you don't. But this could go viral if people start to say, hey, I can't leave my family, I can't leave my job, I can't move to a rural area, but I am desperately in need of tools to improve my life. And I may never even come to a spiritual path, but I think it's so important for all of us to realize, stick to Master's teachings. We don't need the fluff. Stick to the core of what we're doing, and then apply it in practical spiritual ways that people can use. And if we can do this, it's the will of Babaji that this happens now. And we just have to get out of the way and let it happen. So we need you. You know, when Jyotish and I travel, we were gone last year. We traveled 4 months out of suitcases. And we knew you were all praying for us. We knew, we could feel it Believe me, we could not have done that without your prayers and support daily. We fed on them. And so with this institute, as Jyotish was saying, it's still in a very formative stage. So we need your concerted effort to help, to ask Master and Babaji, clarify the ideas, open the door so it can happen. So it's a communion of intention to spread these teachings on a very, very widespread basis. And we ask that you hold this project in your heart, in your prayers, and try to really help it become crystalline so that it can shine the light of the gurus into the world. And so thank you for coming. Thank you for being who you are, each one of you. And Pia kept saying, this was her first time at the village. She just said, I've never seen people like this. I've never seen people like this. And it was actually wonderful to see the community through her eyes, because we could see it with not, oh yeah, there's Virani. I have to say, it was so marvelous. We were driving past the dairy, and Virani was, of course, very busy doing something, and she just stopped for a minute, and she said, I was a devotee on my own for 17 years, but then I came here living with Kriyabans. She said, there's nothing like it. And then she just went on her way and fed the girls. And we were just so charmed by it. But anyway, I really, there's a great work. Master said to Swami, remember, you have a great work to do, and I will give you the strength to do it. And he added later, and there's a great work that's happening through Ananda. And this is just, I don't like when people say, this is the future, this is the cutting edge. There are infinite numbers of futures and cutting edges, but this is one that has great potency and great potential. So let's hold it in our prayers that it can become a fully realized manifestation of the vision that we shared with you all. So God bless you and thank you. Okay, yeah, so this beautiful young woman, who I would like to, it's you.
I was wondering who that was.
She'll be flying back to India. She has 2 small children and a loving husband, and they are calling her all the time, when are you coming over? She'll be flying out on Wednesday. And she made a very special trip to come here. Her life is very demanding and busy. So let's all stand and send her our blessings for a safe journey and many returns.
I'm a little nervous doing it in front of all of you. So.
Well, but let's all stand together. Okay. So, the Indira Institute, a vehicle for transforming consciousness for the world, sharing Master's power, his ray, and his marvelous, marvelous teachings. May it come to be.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru. Paramahansa Yogananda Maharaj ki Jai.